Again, thank you, each one of you, for joining this evening to study the Epistle of Romans. And I'm delighted that you have come to study this epistle. Today we are getting into a very important portion of the Epistle of Romans. That is actually the section from 118 onwards. 118 to 320 is one section in the book of the Epistle of Romans. And there he is explaining the reason why we need the gospel of the Lord Jesus Christ. When we are sick, we go to doctors. And if the doctor is a good doctor, he doesn't prescribe the medicine without knowing what is the problem. So the expertise of a doctor is finding out what is the problem with the patient, or a proper diagnosis is absolutely essential for the proper treatment. So that is what Apostle Paul is doing from chapter 1, verse 18 to chapter 3, verse 20, where he will diagnose the problem of man and why we are where we are and what is our problem and what is our situation will be very properly diagnosed in this particular section of the Epistle of Romans. I will be only talking to you from Romans 1:18. I won't be able to cover the whole of 1:18 to 3:20, but we will be dealing with one portion explaining the problem of man. That is 1:18 through 23, where Apostle Paul will introduce the problem of man. Let me read that verses to you, and then we will come back and look at it in little detail. It reads, that is Romans chapter 1, verse 18 through 23. For the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men, who by their unrighteousness suppress the truth. For what can be known about God is plain to them, because God has shown it to them. For his invisible attributes, namely his eternal power and divine nature, have been clearly perceived ever since the creation of the world in the things that have been made, so they are without excuse. For although they knew God, they did not honor him as God or give thanks to him, but they became futile in their thinking, and their foolish hearts were darkened. Claiming to be wise, they became fools and exchanged the glory of the immortal God for images resembling mortal man and birds and animals and creeping things. So this is the indictment of Apostle Paul of humanity. When you look at verses 1:18 to 3:20, he divides actually it into three portions, or three target audiences. And from 1:18 to the end of the chapter of 1, he's actually mainly addressing man in general, or the Gentiles in particular. He's talking to everybody, but he has a special focus upon the sins of the Gentile world. Everybody is included in his discussion. Then after that, he is going to talk about people who claim that, they have a right with God, and their life is righteous, and they are well with God. And so he's talking to that particular group of people. We will call them the moralists. They are the people who claim that, they're fine with God, and their life is right with God in their own estimation. Then he addresses particularly this moralist. Actually, the Jewish people were probably the most important group of people who were moralists, who considered themselves to be acceptable to God. And so he is addressing the Jews in particular. Then he will conclude it in verse 23, saying that all have sinned and have fallen short of God's standard or God's glory. So we are looking at the portion where he is addressing mainly the Gentiles. And he's actually talking to all of us with regard to human problem. What is God, the problem of man? In the verses that I have read to you, I would like to summarize it or put it into three main statements from these verses. First, I want to talk to you about what is the wrath of God? Why God is? What do you mean when we say that God is angry? What is the meaning of the wrath of God? That'll be the first thing that I want to talk to you. The second thing that I want to talk, actually, what Apostle Paul is saying, why God is angry with people. What is the reason for the wrath of God? That will be the second point that I want to show to you. And the third, the reason why God is angry is because of the rejection of God. That is the third point, of the main problem with man. What has happened to him? That he has rejected God. That is his main problem, and that is what he will introduce. That whole idea will be introduced in the last portion of the section that we have read. Well, let's come to the first point. He actually begins verse 18 by the statement "for," or he is giving the reason why we need the gospel, why we so desperately need the righteousness that is revealed in the gospel, why we need the gospel. The reason is, Apostle Paul will say, God is angry at us. God is angry. The wrath of God is the reason why we need the salvation of God. We need the righteousness of God. Well, the idea of the wrath of God, the anger of God, is sometimes, in our thinking, it is compatible with what we understand about God. When we read the Old Testament, probably we might be able to think of God as an angry God. But when we are coming to the New Testament, as God has revealed himself through the Lord Jesus Christ, he is a God of love and compassion. And so to say that God is angry and God is there is the wrath of God that is being revealed, sometimes it is incompatible with our idea of God. So some people would like to say that the God of the Old Testament is a God of anger, and the God of the New Testament is actually a God of love. But that is not the way the Bible presents God. When we are talking about the wrath of God, it is not like the anger of human beings, our anger. We get angry at people because we are frustrated with them. We are irritated with people, and then we get angry with them. And Apostle James in his book will say that the anger of man does not fulfill the righteousness of God. Or our anger is in many cases is irrational. It's also unfair. We get angry without a reason. It is because of our own sinfulness. But the anger of God is very different. It is a righteous anger. It is righteous anger. God is upset with the sin of people. God is angry with the unrighteousness of people. And again, if you really look at the righteousness and the love of God, we have to understand that each attribute of God is complete in itself in God, and it doesn't contradict any other attribute of God. We have to understand God as a righteous God as well as also as a loving God. Righteousness will not be compromised for the sake of love. And love will not be compromised for the sake of righteousness either. We have to understand it in its balance. And again, when we are talking about wrath and anger, we have to say that a person who cannot be angry at evil is not a good person at all. If you are naive and you are not angry at what is happening around us, when what is happening around us is evil and wickedness and unrighteousness, and if you are not enraged, then something is wrong with you. You are not a righteous person. You are not a good person. But we have to know that God is a righteous, holy God, and he will not compromise to any of our wickedness. He will not overlook any of our sin. And we are accountable to God, and God is angry when we violate his commandments. And when we walk away from him, God is angry at it, and rightly so. So we have to understand that God is angry at the sins of the people of the world. He does not compromise, and he does not overlook the unrighteousness of people, and including us. He will not overlook them. We are accountable to God, and all our actions are plain before God, and he's a righteous judge, and he judges people righteously, and he is angry at the sins of people. When we are talking about the wrath of God or the anger of God, Apostle Paul is saying that it is revealed from heaven. So we have to understand that in Acts again. The revelation of the wrath of God is actually a present action. That is the focus or the attention of Apostle Paul. It is being revealed. It is in the present tense. It is being revealed. when we are talking about the wrath of God, we have to understand that in all there is the wrath of God which is going to be revealed in the future. That is the ultimate revelation of the wrath of God. And the Bible calls it the day of the wrath of God, or the day of the judgment of God, the day of the Lord, when he will judge every human being according to the righteous standard of God. There's a day of reckoning for all of us, and we cannot escape the hand of God. And in the words of the writer of the Hebrews, he will say that once you die, and then judgment. That is what how God has orchestrated the world. And people have no concern for the judgment of God, the wrath of God. That we are accountable to God. We have to stand before Him. That thought is alien in the hearts of so many people. They don't care, and that's what actually Apostle Paul is going to say. That's our problem. We don't care. We really don't care. But the wrath of God is revealed. It is the revelation of the wrath of God is ultimately at the final judgment day. But there is, in one sense, the wrath of God is being revealed continuously in the history of man. In the present time, in the proclamation of the gospel, the wrath of God is also proclaimed. The righteous requirements of God is proclaimed. And then we have to say about the wrath of God is that, in the present time also, man receives the judgment of God for their sin. In one sense, not in the full sense of the word, but in a very real sense, man experiences the consequences of his sin, the punishment of God, the judgment of God. He experiences the wrath of God in his life when he sins. And because of his sin, he experiences God's wrath continuously in his life. Someone has described it as the case of a volcano. When you see the volcano, it is going to erupt in one particular, it is going to erupt in the future, but it shows signs of that. It is going to come. There is rumblings, and there is the smoke and the lava, and that it is going to burst, and there is a present experience of the wrath of God, and then there is going to be the ultimate experience of the wrath of God. So Apostle Paul is saying that that wrath of God is revealed, that is continuously being revealed. The life of a sinner is the experience of God's wrath in his life, and that is very unfortunate. And the experience of a sinner is actually the experience of the wrath of God in his life, not in his full sense, but in a very real sense. So he's talked about the wrath of God as the righteous anger of God against sin. The holy character of God does not permit him to overlook sin. God is angry at the wickedness of man. God is angry at my wickedness, and he doesn't overlook the sins of people. And this revelation, or this righteous anger, is in one sense is being continuously revealed in the experience and the history of man, which will ultimately be revealed in its fullness at the day of judgment. Then Apostle Paul is talking about, when he is talking about the wrath of God, he's saying that it is being revealed from heaven. It is being revealed from heaven. That is also a very interesting statement. If the wrath of God is revealed from some place in the world, so we might be able to see that it is being reconciled in some way. But heaven is a place which is beyond the grasp of man, beyond his influence, beyond any possibility that he might be able to manipulate. It is beyond him. It is from heaven. It is God's abode, where man has no say, and he is going to be righteously judged by God. So this judgment, this anger of God, this wrath of God is from heaven, without the influence of any other influences that we might rely on in order to escape the wrath of God. And again, I want to say that the fact that God is angry is a very serious problem. The fact that God is angry. You know that if your husband or your wife is angry, that is a problem. Your parents are angry, that is a problem. If your children are angry, that is a problem. If the government is angry and the police is angry, man, you are in greater trouble. But if they are angry, you might be able to find some way of escape. If your wife is angry, probably you might be able to walk away from home and be away for a while. There are many ways in which you might be able to avoid or the repercussions of the anger of the people. The government, you might be able to leave the country. But what would you do if God is angry? Man, there is no place of escape. And in the words of Psalmist David in Psalm 139, he says that, if I take on the wings of the morning and fly to the uttermost parts of the earth and try to hide, he said, you are still there. So there is no way that we might be able to escape the anger of God. So that's a very serious problem. When God is angry and he is angry from heaven, we better reckon with God with regard to his anger. Then, so he talked about, I talked a little bit about the nature of the anger of God and the reality of it, and then from where it is coming. Then, he's talking about why, that is the second thing that I want to talk about. Why God is angry? What is the reason for his anger? And that is what that Paul continues to say. He's saying he is angry against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men, who by their unrighteousness suppress the truth. So that is the reason for God's anger. In one statement or one word, the reason for the anger of God is that people, we suppress the truth. That's why God is angry. We suppress the truth. We are not willing to face reality. We are not willing to face the truth. We are trying to escape from it. We are suppressing it. We are trying to manipulate it. We are trying to avoid it. And that is the problem with man. He is suppressing the truth. When the Apostle Paul is talking about the truth, there are various aspects to that particular word. Probably a simple statement might be reality. Truth is a reality. How things really are. That is actually the truth. Truth is very stubborn. Truth is very stubborn. Whatever you do with it, it will not bend. It will not change. You can argue with it. You can shake your fist against it. You can do all kinds of things against the truth for the time being, but that will not change. That will not change the reality. The expression that, we are suppressing the truth, there is also an indication that the attempt of man in evading or suppressing the truth is actually not successful. It is futile. It won't work. There is an indication in that particular statement. Someone has said that it is like trying to hold a ball underwater. It is trying to hold a ball underwater. When you take your hand off, it emerges back to the top. It just goes up. We will not be able to hold it down. That is exactly what happens with truth. You can fight with it. The truth will not change with your convenience or with your inconvenience. Your arguments will not work against it. If it is true, any amount of argument will not invalidate it. If heaven and hell, if they are true, you might say that I don't like it. That won't change reality. That will not change reality. So the wisdom of man, the wisdom of all of us, is to understand the truth and submit to the truth. Submitting to the truth is our greatest freedom. And when we rebel against truth, we rebel against reality, rebel against what the way things are, how God has orchestrated it, our attempt in defeating that will not work. And so that is our problem. We are suppressing the truth. We are not willing to accept the truth. We are not willing to accept reality as God has created it. We want to manipulate it. And this separation of truth is actually explained by 3 words by Apostle Paul. And he says that man is suppressing the truth. He's suppressing the truth with ungodliness and unrighteousness. He is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men, who by their unrighteousness suppress the truth. So man is suppressing the truth in 2 different areas. One is in the area of godliness, and the other is in the area of righteousness. Or his problem is twofold. Man's problem, man's rebellion is twofold, according to Apostle Paul. One is ungodliness, and the other is unrighteousness. Ungodliness, that word is actually related to how we relate to God. Ungodliness, asabea, is our relationship with God. And unrighteousness is more related to our relationship with man. So, our problem is, we are having problem with God and we are having problem with people. That is our problem. We're having problem with God and also we have problem with people. That is our problem. Or in other words, I might say that, all the problems that we have with man originates with our problem with God. Ungodliness is the foundation of unrighteousness. There is no fear of God in the heart of man. There is no fear of God. He doesn't want to honor God. He doesn't want to listen to God. God's word has no place in his life. He is ungodly. He is unwilling to listen to God. He has no respect for God. And he rebels against God. And he doesn't like God. And he is not willing to listen to God. That is his problem. Someone has said that, man is looking for God like a thief looking for a policeman. Man has no desire to know God. In his own existence, man, even though people will say great things about their desire for truth and God, in the heart of hearts, we are rebels. We don't like God. We don't like the way he functions or he has orchestrated the world, and we are very upset with God. There is no fear of God in our hearts. Ungodliness is our basic problem. When you look at the Ten Commandments in the Old Testament, the first four commandments are directed towards our problem with God. How we have problem with God and how that can be fixed is what Moses will say in the first four commandments of the Ten Commandments. And then he will talk about how we might be able to get along with other human beings, our problem with man. Again, let me repeat what I have already said to you. The problem of man originates with his problem with God. He has no fear of God. And then his relationship with all human beings are crumbled because he is not willing to be rightly related to God. And again, the cross is a two-dimensional, instrument. There is a vertical beam to the cross, and then there is a horizontal beam to the cross. Cross fixes our problem with God, and then as a result, it fixes our problem with one another, human beings. There is a vertical dimension to all our problems. And our horizontal problems can be solved only on the basis of the solution to our vertical problem. So that is what Apostle Paul will say. We are suppressing the truth. We are not willing to confront the truth. We are not willing to face the reality because we are ungodly. We are not willing to accept God. We are not willing to respect him. We are not willing to listen to him. We are ungodly. That is our problem. And because of our ungodliness, that is being expressed in our unrighteousness, in our relationship with one another. We are not treating one another the way we should. And all the wickedness that we see in this world, all the conflicts and exploitation and all the wickedness that is being experienced by human beings is because of the problem with God. Ungodliness is the basis of all our problems with human beings. So then Apostle Paul will say that God is angry at the unrighteousness, the ungodliness and the unrighteousness of man who suppresses the truth in unrighteousness. In unrighteousness. That's also a very interesting statement. Or, as an explanation, I will say that man's problem with God is not intellectual. Basically, man's problem with God is not intellectual problem. His basic problem is not intellectual with God. His basic problem is moral and volitional. Unrighteousness is the reason why people hate God. That's why they hate him. Because they cannot live the way they want to live. God is a hindrance. God is a disturbance in their life. And that is their problem. Brothers and sisters, I will say that, when people reject God, they will bring in all these intellectual, philosophical arguments. But the basic problem is that people want to live the way they want to live. God should not be a stumbling block, should not be a disturbance in their life. They want to live the way they want to live. And if you look at the ungodly and atheistic philosophies of the world, behind all their arguments, you can see that, the main reason that they want to be the way they want to be is because they want to handle their life the way they want to live. They don't want to be accountable to God. There is the thought of a final judgment for man, and he is accountable to his creator, is very unpleasant to the human mind. It is very unpleasant. We think that we are accountable to nobody, and we can live the life that we want to the way we want to, and then that is the end of the story. No, that's not what the Bible says, and that is not the reality. We are created, we are creatures, and we are accountable to the Creator. And there is a day of reckoning. We have to stand before God to give an account for our life, and there is a day of judgment. That is a very clear statement of the Bible, and it is very unpleasant to the ears of men. And so, people have come up with all kinds of arguments to avoid God, to get rid of Him, so that, they can live their lives the way they want to live. But Apostle Paul says God is angry at their attempt to do this. Because they say, Apostle Paul will say, they suppress the truth. They don't want to face the reality. They want to make their own world. There is, in our modern times, people will say that I create my own reality. I create my own world. And I want to be the boss of my world, and nobody is telling me what to do, and I will live the way I want to live. Oh no. That is your attempt to try to suppress the truth. Stand against reality and fight against God. But in this fight, you are not going to win. That's for sure. There are certain things we cannot change. The things which are true will not bend according to our convenience. So we talked a little bit about the anger or the wrath of God, and then we talked about the reason why God is angry. The wrath of God is the righteous indignation of God against the wickedness of people. And then the reason why God is angry is because people willingly suppress the truth because it is inconvenient to them, because of their ungodliness and because of their unrighteousness. They want to suppress the truth, and they want to live their lives the way they want to live it. So one of the major proof of this suppression of the truth, or what is one of the major areas of the suppression of the truth, Apostle Paul will continue to say that that is actually the knowledge of God. Our understanding of God is the area in which we have made the greatest blunder or greatest rebellion, is in the area of our understanding of God. So he says, what is the proof that we suppress the truth? And Apostle Paul will say the greatest proof is our suppression of the knowledge of God. For what we can be known about God is plain to them because God has shown it to them. For his invisible attributes, namely his eternal power and divine nature, have been clearly perceived ever since the creation of the world. The greatest proof for the suppression of the truth is the suppression of man with regard to the knowledge of God. The suppression of the knowledge of God, or the suppression or the rejection of the knowledge of God. Apostle Paul says that, all people, irrespective of their social status or their condition, everybody has got a certain amount of knowledge with regard to God. Anybody can have it, and no one can deny it. And he's talking about what can be known about God. What can be known about God? When we are talking about the knowledge of God, God is God, and so we cannot fully comprehend God. And in our simple minds, sometimes we want to restrict God in our thinking. We want to make a box, and we want to fit God in that box. God will not fit in any box that any man ever can make. God will not fit in that box. So but God has revealed himself. Certain things about God can be known. That's what Apostle Paul is saying. Looking at from what God has made, we will get certain understanding of God. That understanding is not complete. That understanding is not going to save you. That's all true. But there are certain things that anyone can know about God. And there are two things that Apostle Paul is talking about that we all can know. One is the existence of God, about his invisible attributes. These things are not seen by human eyes, but it has to be seen by the eye of the heart. You have to comprehend it. These invisible attributes are very plain and very obvious to everybody who has a mind. Two things are very obvious. One is his eternal power, and second is his divine nature. Uh, you can translate divine nature as divinity or the existence of God. Two things can be known. There is a God. The existence of God is evident. And then the second thing is that this God is all powerful. That is also evident. Two things can be known very easily by anybody who has a mind. That by he says that the reason why this is possible is because clearly perceived ever since the creation of the world. You know, atheism as a philosophy is recent. Atheism as a philosophy is recent. That is something which has come over in the 1800s mainly. In the 1800s is atheism became a very popular philosophy, then the communism. That is a recent discovery. There were atheists in the ancient times as well, but that was not a common accepted kind of a way of thinking. Some people say that there is no God. That's even in the Bible we have statements that the fool says that in his heart that there is no God. But atheism as a philosophy, as a way of life, and as a common understanding is recent. And that is the innovation and the invention of the modern man, that there is no God. But you look at the history of the whole world, everybody will accept that when there is creation, there is a creator. When there is creation, there is a creator. That is very evident. There is no way out from that plain reality, plain truth. There is no way out. And I was listening to Richard Dawkins, probably one of the most prominent voices of atheism in our times is Richard Dawkins. And somebody asked him, what kind of proof is needed for you to believe in God? What kind of a proof will actually convince you that there is a God? And he said, at one time I thought a certain kind of things might convince me, but now I am convinced that no proof will convince me. Yeah. So the problem is not intellectual. The problem is actually volitional. You have made the decision that there is no God. And then there is no way of proving that there is a God. But brothers and sisters, it is very, very simple reality that when there is something, there is someone behind it. That is a very common reality that no one can escape. When there is a car, there is a car maker. When there is a watch, there is a watchmaker. When there is a house, there is someone who has built that house. Nothing comes out of nothing. That is a very simple reality. And then, in the following verses, Apostle Paul will say that they claim to be wise. They claim to be wise. When people who say that there is no God, probably they consider themselves to be the wisest people in the world. But they cannot answer the very simple reality question. Why there is something rather than nothing? Why there is something rather than nothing? What is the reason for this something? They have no answer. They have absolutely no answer. Apostle Paul is clearly perceived. There is no question. There is no doubt. It is very clearly perceived that there is a God behind what we see in the world. Another thing that we might be able to know about God, if God is a creator, he has to be a powerful, an eternal power of God. That is something which we can think about also. What kind of a God do you have? What is your understanding of God? Is it a small God? J.B. Phillips has a very famous statement. Our problem is our God is too small. Our problem is our God is too small. We can manipulate our God. We can restrain and constrain our God. But that's not the God of the universe. That is not the God of the Bible. We have to come to terms with, come to grips with the reality of the power of God. Oh, my brothers and sisters, if you look at creation, look at the world, which is actually a small planet in this universe. It is a speck, like a speck of a dust, in this universe. But how beautifully this earth is made. How beautifully human beings are made. When I look at the complicated, the complex, the extreme complexity of man, his mind, his brain, everything that man is created with. You know, and they say that it just is an accident. Oh, what foolishness! What foolishness! Absolute stupidity to think that something this complex has come into being by itself. That is absolute foolishness. My brothers and sisters, I will say that the God who created me and you, and the God who created this universe, is absolutely powerful. By his word, says the Bible, he created the earth and the sky and everything in the universe. And that is the God of the Bible. And looking at the vastness of the universe, looking at the complexity of the minute elements in the universe, oh, we marvel at the great power of God. We marvel at the great power of God. So this is a reality that anybody can understand. You don't need to be too intelligent, or you don't need to be a rocket scientist in order to understand that there is a creator. And if he is the creator of this universe, he has to be extremely powerful. The existence of God and the omnipotence of God, they are very visible, clearly seen by the things that God has created. So man has no excuse. Man has no excuse. So what is it that man has done, or what is it that proves that man has suppressed the truth? Man is not willing to believe in God, the true God. And how did people respond, or we respond to God? And that is the way we show that we are suppressing the truth. When the people have come to know that there is a God behind everything that is being created, and this God is absolutely powerful, what did they do? What did they do? Although they knew God, they did not honor him as God or give thanks to him. But they became futile in their thinking, and their foolish hearts were darkened. That's what they have done. When they have come to know God, they refuse to honor God. They refuse to honor God. It is very, very natural, my brothers and sisters, when you find that there is authority, and he is a powerful authority, you fear him. Even you fear a police officer. If you don't, you are in trouble. You are in trouble. When there is authority, when there is power, when there is greatness, you respect it, you honor it. That's what should be the natural response of human beings. But they didn't do it. They give no respect. They did not honor God. So that is my question to you, and also to me. Do you know God? That's my question. Do you know God? What kind of a God do you believe in? Do you believe in a God whom you can manipulate? Do you believe in a small God who listens to you and probably needs your advice in order to conduct the affairs of the world? Is that the kind of God that you believe in? So that you can, wrestle with him and win? Is that kind of God that you believe in? And if you really know the greatness of God, the power of God, how do you respond to him? Do you honor him? Do you fear him? So that is a great question. The one who created us, the one who has put breath in our nostrils, the one who allows us to live each day, the one who has created oxygen so that we might be able to breathe, and one who has created my lungs and my heart so that I can live. I turn around and despise God. I don't care. I don't care. I am my own creator. And someone has rightly said that the modern man is self-made and he worships his creator. Modern man is self-made and he worships his creator. So egoistic, so self-centered, so arrogant. They can stand against God, that they think. And they can talk to God and manipulate him. That won't work. That is our problem. We know God, or we fail to know him. We close our eyes, and their hearts were darkened. They became futile. Instead of accepting the reality, instead of accepting the truth, we began to bring in arguments. We began to bring in all kinds of objections. But at the end, Apostle Paul will say, It is just futility. It is just futility. It won't work. It will not stand the test of time. We are still human. We die. We face an eternity. We face our Creator. We need to humble ourselves before God. We really need to. And then we need to give thanks to Him. We are rebellious. God is angry because we will not acknowledge Him. We will not give thanks to Him. I will close this with a statement from a famous philosopher, Cornelius Evantil. He said, we are living in God's world, God's earth, eating the food that God has created in the world, breathing the air that God has created, and refuses to acknowledge any obligation to God. That is our problem. Is it right that God is angry? Is there any reason that God is angry? There is every reason for God to be angry, very angry, at my ingratitude, my stubbornness, my arrogance, my unwillingness to stand up to reality. That is a great problem. That's why God is angry and we are under the wrath of God, under the judgment of God. Then Apostle Paul will explain how that judgment is actually revealed in our experience. That will be the subject of our next session. Oh, may we fear Him. Oh, may we give thanks to Him and may we listen to Him. He is our freedom. He is our salvation. May God help us. Thank you.